This is great. Thank you, everybody, for being here. As you enter, if you can change your Zoom name, so go to the top of your video box, and you'll see the three dots, and one of the choices is to rename yourself. And if you could please rename yourself with your organization and then your title. And we're going to get started in just a moment. This is great. Okay. And as you come in, if you can keep yourself muted, that would be wonderful. Thank you again for being here. I'm going to share my screen for just a moment. All right. So welcome. This is the first discovery workshop in a series of 12 as part of the Improving the Circularity of Compostables initiative. And this initiative is a whole system future search strategic planning initiative. My name is Candy Castellanos, and I am joined by my co-facilitator, Ariel Sullivan, and the Compost Manufacturing Alliance folks, Susan and Janet Toman. And we are also here with support of our 25-member steering committee and all of our wonderful shared funding partners. And so as we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. So as you enter, if you could please change your name to begin with your organization and then your name, and if there's room, your title. Fabulous. As you notice, we are recording this. This is going into a library of resources that is leading up to our big 3-day strategic planning event. And so as we go, as you think of questions either for us or for the panelists, what we're going to ask is that you put those into the chat. And what we're going to do is, if we have time, we're going to go through some of the questions today, but our intention is to gather all of those great questions and work with the panelists afterwards and come up with a Q&A that we can share afterwards. And so as you think of things, feel free to put them into the chat. We'll be reviewing that. And so I want to get us started. So why are we here? Hold on one second. All right. So we have been working for a while now to organize this. And what this is a part of is a whole system strategic planning initiative. And so our intention with the discovery workshops leading up to a 3-day strategic planning event is to create a shared vision and a common purpose with a clear action plans based on the work that everybody is willing to do. And so by whole system, we mean the whole system. We mean every type of organization, for-profit, nonprofit, academic, that is involved and that touches compostables, so compostable serviceware. Big picture for our initiative is that we hope that what we come out of the 3-day strategic planning event with, that's going to happen in September, is to provide and define an improved circularity model and create a shared vision for compostables between the supply chain and the solid waste systems, that we decrease the barriers for accepting compostables into industrial composting sites by addressing all of the costly collection and process challenges, as well as food-related plastic contamination. And last but not least, that we increase food scrap collection to support the mitigation strategies to address climate change and minimize plastic pollution in the environment. So big picture initiative goals. And so all of the pieces and parts are here. So you are here today as part of the first of 12 discovery workshops. These discovery workshops are exactly that. It's meant for the system to better understand itself before the entire system comes together for a 3-day future search strategic planning event in September. And then this entire initiative is co-facilitated by myself and Ariel, and we are here to support both the lead up to the event, to guide and hold the space for the event itself, and then assist with activation of the strategic plan that is created there. We are here today because we have a wonderful array of shared funding partners and supporters. And so just wanted to give a huge shout out to everybody here that has helped us launch. And this is a big, today you're here as part of kind of our first step in moving toward that 3-day strategic planning event. And so I'm going to hand this over to Ariel to talk about the Discovery Workshop series. Just before I do that, for the folks who just joined, if you can change your Zoom name to start with your organization and then your name and your title. You'll notice that this is being recorded. This is part of a library of resources that we're building ahead of the 3-day strategic planning event. And then as we go, whether the questions are for Ariel and myself or for the panelists, please put those questions in the chat. We'll be gathering that. And after this event today, we are going to be sending those out. So Ariel.
Well, thanks, Candy. Welcome, everyone. It's really exciting to be at this point. We had our steering committee kickoff last week, and now this is our first Discovery Workshop series. We have a total of 12 different workshops between now and September. And you'll see here from this photo all of the different types of stakeholder groups that we're involving in this initiative. So these are types of stakeholders that participate in this interconnected system of compostables. And here we are starting with Compost Manufacturers, and we have haulers coming up next. So every few weeks, we will start to get into a cadence of hosting these calls. And we really encourage anyone to attend, whether you've committed to going to the event in September or not. The intention of this is to build a better understanding of the whole, as like usually in our lives, we operate in silos, especially in organizations and then across organizations, across industries. We're not always interacting with all pieces of the whole or understand the needs and challenges of the whole. And that's what really makes this whole initiative different, is that we are doing that in the event itself and all the way leading up to the event. And the intent is really to build understanding of each other's perspectives on where they sit in the system, what are the needs, what are the challenges, and also just starting to weave relationships a little bit more and create a more familiarity of who's who in this system. So yeah, shifting to our panelists. So we have A1 Organics here today, Clinton, Bob, and Travis. Thank you for being here. Biotech Composting, Scott, Cedar Grove, Jay, Brian from Denali. And then we've got some responses from Tim and Nama from Napa that I will be reading into the room. And then Jeff from Next Gen Organics. So thank you, all of you, for being here. And basically the flow is we've got 4 questions. We're going to spend about 20 minutes on each question, and each composter is going to have about 3 minutes to answer each question. If we have additional time, we'll see if there's any kind of cross-pollination between the panelists. Like if you have heard something that someone else shared that you want to add on to, or you want to clarify, or say something that might be a little bit different from your perspective, like we want to leave some space for that. And then if there's extra room, we're going to pull some questions in from the chat to really get more audience engagement. So we'll just see what happens and where there's energy, and we'll flow and follow the energy. And go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to share, and as you're listening, please add your questions to the chat so that we've got them all there. And then as we have time in this space, we can see if we can get to a few of them. If we don't, regardless, we are gathering those questions and we'll work with our panelists to get a response. So.
Great. And you'll also notice that the slide, Candy, I don't know if you want to share it again. I didn't mention it, but I think this will come up in some of the responses. You'll note the different type of composting facility. And so I think that also impacts what some of the needs and the challenges are and the realities are. And so composters, I invite you to kind of clarify, like when you're talking about your realities, just like to refer to that distinction between those different types of facilities, because I think that's an important piece to note. Okay, so we're going to start with the first question, and I'm just going to put that question in the chat. And so it's, to begin, how many facilities do you have? And then when and why did you start accepting compostable packaging? So I'd love to hear from Clinton and Bob first with A1.
Well, this will be the one where I speak, and then I'm just going to be available for Clinton to direct me from here. We started in 1977, working at our Lost Antlers facility north of Golden with EcoCycle on a pilot. Prior to that, we had three composting facilities at that time: Eaton, Lost Antlers, which was north of Golden, and a Platteville facility, which was north of Denver, between Denver and Greeley. And so we started there in 1997. As I said, we were doing the partnership with EcoCycle and a kind of a bucket pickup type thing. We'd also done some testing with PLA. PLA producers had approached us about testing their materials in our windrow system. As we were using windrow initially up there, and then we added the MSAP system, which is the modified static aerobic pile system. It's kind of a poor man's in vessel system. And anyway, we did that then. After we did the testing on the PLA pellets, is when we started getting more compostable type packaging. There wasn't a lot going on there other than paper products and etc. So that's when we started, and we worked there until 2010. Lost Antlers, we closed that due to the lease, the last holder wanting property back. And we moved to our Rattler Ridge facility, which is the one that you see behind me in the picture. And we also had the Platteville facility and Eaton facility at that time. We also we continue to operate most all food waste composting with any packaging that we've had is at the Rattler Ridge facility. Again, that's 430-acre site northeast of Denver. We compost on roughly about 200 acres of that actively. The reasons were probably the ones you've all mentioned. We saw the potential benefits of food waste diversion. We obviously want to have it. We believe very much in our community in Colorado, and we wanted to be the leader out here to help make a lot of this stuff happen. So I won't go into a lot of the issues we had there at that facility. I'll kind of leave it at that. That's where we started, and we saw the need coming for the benefit of diversion of more food waste for all the environmental benefits we all understand, and also replacement of plastics because of plastic pollution. So I'll leave it there. And Clinton or Travis, you want to add anything, let me know.
Yeah, I was just going to add, just important for context and how our operation works, is that, guys, we are a compost manufacturer, so we are a processor only. We do not haul. We do not haul or work directly with the hauling side of this. All of the material coming into our facilities is through third-party hauling, or if we're working like with Republic Services or Waste Management, that type of. So we're just a processor, not a hauler. I think that's important.
Any other comments? We move to the next person. All right, Scott.
Wait.
Or go ahead, Bob.
No. I was going to say one other thing. We stopped accepting compostables almost a year ago, and that's important too.
Very important distinction. Thank you. Scott, go ahead.
Yes, I'm Scott Deathridge, General Manager of Bartech Compost. We are a regional facility in Eastern Washington. We have just one facility. We bring in right around 100,000 ton a year of organics materials from the region, primarily sitting in the county of Spokane. We do accept compostable products only on a case-by-case, pre-approved, venue-by-venue basis. And we started doing that when we started. We've been in operation since our first year of full operation was 2011. We, as you see, are an aerated static pile system, negatively aerated static pile system. And yeah, we started receiving some of the compostable products from primarily, there was 3 regional universities in the area, from cafeteria waste from there, and then also a minor league baseball stadium. Again, it's very specific, very venue by venue approval. They're pretty much closed systems, so there's no outside potential for contamination. And unfortunately, I think the contamination is the big issue with all of them, even as specific as we are there. So yeah, I guess that's really, yeah, again, we are just a compost manufacturer. We do not offer collection or the hauling. And yeah, that's it.
Great. Thank you, Scott. I will move over to Jay with Cedar Grove.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jay Blasey. I'm the general counsel at Cedar Grove Composting, based in Seattle, Washington. We have 2 facilities that service the greater Puget Sound region, one in Everett, and that's an in-vessel entirely gore cover system. And then we have a facility near Bellevue in an area called Maple Valley, which has a negative air system and a gore system. So we have a couple of different technologies processing compostables. We started composting in 1989 for the city of Seattle. And I think I've been with Cedar Grove for 8 years, but around 2004, we started seeing compostable products on the market. I think it was an exciting time because of a new way to, avoid plastics and things of that nature. And I think eventually we started to see that these compostable products weren't actually breaking down in our system. We've always been in favor of accepting them. We think it's the right thing to do for our customers and for our region to increase diversion and get people committed to composting and doing the right thing. But it has presented a lot of complications, some of which we can touch on today. So I guess that answers the question of why we started. And then from there, we've worked diligently to try to figure out what products break down and what to accept on our acceptance list. And from there, we're still taking these products and we're working with our local partners on solutions to some of the challenges of doing so. I would add that Cedar Grove, we also started a commercial collection business. So we do have a hauling operation, which is helpful because we can talk to our customers directly about what products they should be purchasing and using, what's not working. And so we have a fleet that collects commercial organics from businesses in our region, stadiums, et cetera. And our program actually started with just working with commercial businesses. So the way that our system's set up in Washington, commercial side is what's called open market. And so we can haul it and process it, whereas residential is kind of a different jurisdiction. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So anyways, happy to be here and hope to have a positive discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Brian with Denali.
Thank you. Yeah, so Denali is nationwide. We operate in pretty much every state, but from a composting standpoint, we have 18 active composting sites, 10 that receive food waste at this time. Everywhere from Connecticut down all the way to I think as far west as we go is Phoenix at this point, as far as composting, but we handle all types of residual waste. So we do a lot of land application, we go farm to feed, we have various ways of handling the residuals, organic residuals throughout the country. But as far as composting is concerned, we have many municipal clients where we do public-private partnerships. Probably over half of our active composting sites are public-private partnerships. So a lot of times when we start talking about what's acceptable into our facilities and whether or not compostables are acceptable, we have to work with the municipalities and get on board with them on what they're willing to accept. and what we're willing to accept. So it's really a partnership of, okay, what are we trying to accomplish? What are we trying to bring in? And what will we accept overall as a team? And to try to maximize the amount of feedstocks that we're trying to recycle, whether that's leaf and yard waste, food waste, biosolids, and other residual type waste that we bring into our composting facilities. So we started off as a company called We Care Organics, or that's where I started in 2000. And in 2016, we merged with Denali. Denali didn't have any composting operations at the time. We Care was the composting entity. And then since 2016, we've expanded our reach. Probably our biggest acquisition after We Care and Denali merged was New Earth Compost down in Texas, that have 3 sites, one in Conroe, one in Katy, and the largest one in San Antonio. They do everything bigger in Texas. So the smallest facility is 40 acres and the biggest one's 140 acres. So very large operations, and all of them can receive food waste and do for large extent. And then lastly, in 2021, we purchased a company called Organics with an X. Many of you may be familiar with Organics. We collect food waste from primarily grocery store chains, with our biggest customer being Walmart. And so we service all the Walmarts in the country, and then many of the large grocery store chains from across the country as well. So we're running routes, in all 48 states, and we're bringing some of that back to compost. Some of that goes to direct to feed. Some of it goes to anaerobic digestion. So we have a combination of various outlets and partners throughout the country.
Thanks, Brian. That's incredible. All right, I'm gonna read Napa's response, and then we'll go to Jeff with Next Gen. All right. So Napa Recycling is the local franchise hauler for the city of Napa and surrounding areas of Napa County. We also operate the Napa Recycling and Composting Facility, as well as the Northern Recycling Compost Facility at the Yolo County Central Landfill site. Both facilities are publicly owned and privately operated. Our Napa composting facility first opened in the 90s to compost yard trimmings, grape pomace, and other green waste material. We first started accepting certified compostable packaging in 2008, when we started our first commercial food scrap composting pilot program. Our goal has always been to collect and process material at our recycling and composting facility, as opposed to sending it to landfill. Over the following years, we expanded our collection and updated our composting processing and permitting so that full commercial and residential composting was in effect for all our residential and commercial customers by 2015. We also process material from surrounding jurisdictions, and we accept the same materials as we do in our own collection programs. So that is Napa's response, Tim and Nama. And then I'm going to pass it off to Jeff to take us home for the last question.
Thank you. My name is Jeff West. I'm with Next Gen Organics. We first got into the composting business. We were a hauler and collecting primarily commercial materials. So starting with traditional recycling, and then started doing a lot of schools and working with the county, did a pilot program for food waste primarily out of schools. We were hauling into a composting facility here west of Seattle on the Olympic Peninsula, or the Kitsap Peninsula, and which ended up going bankrupt in 2013. We ended up acquiring that facility and reopened it as Olympic Organics in 2014. Part of our goal was to just be as good a partner within the solid waste system in this area as we could. This is where I've spent my entire career, in the Puget Sound region, managing garbage companies and recycling companies. And so, there was a desire both by customers and from the local solid waste organizations to divert more. And as an independent composter, we had a lot of flexibility to what we took. We were pretty careful. We kind of walked before we ran. We started with, what we accepted relative to BPI. We were part of forming, along with some of the other companies here, CMA, so that we could have confidence in what we would take. We ended up selling our company in late 2022, and that's shortly after that is when we formed Next Gen Organics. So we're believers in the potential for compostable products. Like everybody else, it's a matter of just dealing with the lookalikes and the contamination, and then adjusting your process to address the unique qualities that we ran an ASP system, a bunker based with 11 different bunkers, and we tried to segregate it overall within the system just to minimize the flow of contamination through the final product. So that's kind of our story, and I'll turn it back up to Ariel.
Thanks, Jeff. Any responses from fellow panelists? I know these are kind of just intro questions. There might not be anything to add at this point, but I do see there's one question in the audience. Candy, do we have time for that?
Well, let's check in with the panelists first. And Neil, if you want to put your question in the chat, that'd be great. And then we'll take the questions as we can. And so I think panelists, as you've heard from each other, is there anything else you want to add before we go to some of the questions that are coming up?
Honestly, Candy, I didn't have a question. Just wanted to add to the conversation. I represent about 25 composting facilities in California. Half of them take food material and packaging. All of them started as a function of providing service to the jurisdictions that they are contracted with. Most of them have learned over time that they were not going to be successful if they were taking certain kinds of packaging and certain kinds of waste from specific generators. And at some point during this process, I'm hoping that we get a little more sophisticated about talking about compostable materials, because most of them take some fiber products and paper products. Almost none of them take compostable plastics. So there's a distinct difference in the material types that they're accepting. And that nuanced conversation is, I think, part of the purpose of this entire exercise, is to really get down into the nitty-gritty about what's going to work, what doesn't work, and how we can make it more functional for everybody.
That's great. Thank you. And then, Brian, I'd heard you start to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say that with the diversity of all the sites that we operate as a company, and the fact that we're public-private partnerships, we operate, windrow, in-vessel, aerated static pile. We operate, all those different types of technologies, and what we have at every one of those sites, as far as assets for pre-processing, post-processing to handle contamination, dictates what we're able to take in and what we're willing to take in. And so that's, I know one of the questions is, why, are we taking in compostables, and why we started to take in compostables. I think everybody on this panel would say the reason we take in compostables is because we're looking for the food waste to come into our operations. And it's a mechanism to get more food waste into our operations. And I think that's where we need to start. And then there's complications that surround that. And so, and I know that's where Neil was going, and where everybody is. I can tell you, I've been doing this a long time. And food waste by far is, especially post-consumer food waste, is the most challenging thing that we've had to deal with as an industry to date. And it's the biggest opportunity, but it's the biggest challenge.
Others from the panel? Okay. So we had one question come through that will actually be addressed later. And so I'm going to hold on that. But there was a great question about does having third-party certification, whether it's BPI, CMA, TUV, help with accepting compostable packaging? And is one certification more important than the other? And I think focus maybe on the first part of the question, and then this will be part of the questions that are captured and that we'll have a conversation with the panelists afterwards to provide as a Q&A. Yeah, we've got Clinton.
You want me to answer that first? I'll go out of
Sure.
the gate. I'll go
Yeah.
out of the gate with this. Are we doing that? But is this part of the question 2, or is this just a chat question?
No, this is a chat question. So yeah, if you want to touch on it briefly, and then we're going to pivot in just a moment to the second question, because we've got 4 that we want to get through today. So
Well, I want to preface that with that question, it's complicated. And there's a lot of moving mechanisms going on here that we have to address. So it's just not one bucket, there's multiple buckets. But yes, to have a level of certification that verifies that the type of material that's coming to us is going to break down in our technologies, in our environment, is extremely important. So you have to have a level of, what is it made from? Is it going to break down? And also you have to have a level of field, like we're talking about field disintegration testing, so that we know that it works in the real world environment, in our state, in our technology, in our environment. So yeah, but that gives the confidence to the compost manufacturer that these materials are not going to cause a contamination of the end market product, which is the finished compost. We want to make sure we have the highest quality finished compost to put back in our soils. But we got to get them without anything else with them. And that's part of the bigger problem, bigger challenge.
And then we're not going to linger here for too long. And just so that everybody knows, all the questions asked in the chat are great. There's going to be an opportunity for all the panelists to chime in a question and answer document that we're going to be building after this. So we want to kind of stick to the questions that we have ready. And if there's time at the end, we can jump back into this. And so Brian, I see you. Jeff, I see you. Just pause for a second and we're going to continue with some of the questions that you've prepared for. And so the second question is, what do you believe are the greatest opportunities that come with accepting compostable packaging, whether or not you're actually accepting them currently? And so Clinton, Bob, A1, if you want to start.
Sure. Yeah. Clinton Sander, A1 Organics, marketing manager. So the greatest opportunities we think is the addition of food waste material coming into our site. That was the original intent. Even when Bob spoke about this, we started 20 years ago with a pilot program to help increase food waste diversion, because food waste makes great compost. And so that is they are a tool to help diversion, and they are a mechanism for convenience. They're a mechanism for the ick factor. They help support the upstream collection. Yet that, as we know, as we've gotten to where we are now, there's a lot more out on the market. There's a lot more coming from different directions, and that's really affecting what was the intended purpose, which was food waste diversion. Now it's more moving into a plastic reduction replacement tool. And that is a different process. That is a different treatment. That requires more resources at the compost manufacturer to process these materials, because we're not getting the food. So I think that was really one of the biggest goals. The second one was then contamination reduction was the hope. Like we're going to get, like if they accidentally put in a plastic bag, then if it's compostable and it breaks down when it's supposed to, we're not going to create some contamination in the finished product. But that's not what's happening because of the way they don't break down correctly in all facilities. So unless Bob or Travis has anything else to add, but I think those are the two greatest opportunities if we can make them work well in the system.
Yeah, I think Clinton covered it there. So, we just got back from the USCC composting conference, same conversations there. It's how do we, use this material to help divert food without contaminating the compost, in the process.
That's great. Well,
My quick comment is that I think the USSC conference, the 2 sessions I was in, highly verified the need for certification. I don't think there's a question about that, because the statement that we'll compost in a commercial composting system and on a package means nothing to me. It has to be specific. And I think I really appreciated those 2 sessions that I was in, and they verified that very much. So I'm not endorsing a system, but field verification is massively important.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you, Bob. Scott.
Yeah, opportunities. Presumably, I guess, yeah, being able to divert more food waste to the compost site was certainly our initial goal. Again, all these other guys are a lot more, I think, qualified to talk about this, because we are just so limited to the amount of food waste that we bring to our site as far as the post-consumer stuff. We do get pre-consumer materials, some from Denali. Excellent product. Whatever they're doing works that side. Keep it up. Keep up the good work, because that's what we get. That's the kind of feedstocks we like to see. We haven't just really jumped into the post-consumer compostable plastics arena because of the potential for contamination and what we see in the contamination, in the streams that we do take. We work with those groups closely to minimize that. But yeah, the opportunity, I think, is there. We certainly support the reduction of plastics in the environment, and plastic bag bans I'm all for, because of all the potential problems. So, but I think the presumption is that we could get more food waste in the waste stream, and that, I think, is where the opportunity lies.
That's
Thanks.
great. Jay?
Thanks. So, I mean, I would echo everything that we heard from A1 and Scott as well. We're a little bit further down the road in terms of the packaging that we take and how we're trying to manage it. So it's about food waste diversion. That's how it always started. And then Clinton mentioned that now it's kind of shifted into like a substitute for plastics. And I guess the opportunity that I'm seeing here in some of the jurisdictions that we work in is kind of revisiting the discussion on how we want to set up our system. I think we've seen it with water bottles to a degree that people are using reusables more. And I think that's an important part. Maybe the next evolution is a good look at is limiting the single-use plastics, even the single-use compostables where you can, and setting up a good system that has that component, because the solution just isn't more single-use items. And so that's something that we're working on here, is kind of systems that have a reusable component and then a simplified 100% compostable component. That's probably another opportunity, is now that you have recyclable materials and compostable materials, those need to go to different systems. So figuring out those variables is a good opportunity to set up a nice program that delivers clean compostable feedstocks to the composter.
That's great. Brian?
Yeah, when you go last after, or when you go after multiple composters with this question, I think the answer is pretty simple in the fact that we want more food waste. More food waste for all the reasons, when we start talking about diversion goals, and then for us in business, it's tip fees, right? So, I mean, we haven't really talked about that, but that is part of our business model, is tip fees up front, and then having a product that we can sell on the back end. And so yes, we want more tonnage in the door, and we want more product to sell on the back end, but we need quality product on the back end. And if we're getting you know, the old, we probably all heard it on here, garbage in, garbage out. And what we really need is we need confidence in compostables coming into our facilities. We need to be able to identify, and then if necessary, we need to be able to separate the contamination that's going to come in with it on the front end, and in my opinion, on the front end and the back end. And then all through the process, one of the things that gets lost, especially in like an open windrow type operation, is the litter that comes that's involved with taking in even compostables if they don't break down, and as we turn them up, especially the light film plastic that gets turned up into our piles and then blows all over. I know that all of us probably have had to deal with that at some point or another, and that's actually caused us just a litter issue has caused us to have to slow down, or in some cases stop taking in compostables and the contamination that comes in with them. So I think ultimately we would all agree that if we could verify that, you know, 99% of what's coming into our operation was coming in compostables that's been field tested, that we could literally just run through a shredder or a grinder and put it into our piles and be able to have confidence that that was going to break down and produce a high quality product on the back end, we would all sign up for that tomorrow. And but you know, we're not there yet, but I do commend the industry as a whole. I mean, we've come leaps and bounds on what compostables are doing, like how they break down now, and the technologies that are out there that are creating better polymers and such, it's getting better and better. And so never want to, you know, we want to encourage the advancement more and more and more. So.
No, that's great. Well, and wanted to bring into the conversation what we received from Napa Recycling in response to this. And what they say is, our hope is that certified compostable packaging will bring us more food scraps, since this is our biggest goal, since 50% of the material headed to the landfill is currently organics. In addition, the biggest contamination problem in both our recycling and composting stream is conventional plastic. So compostable packaging is a potential tool to reduce contamination. And so, Jeff, if you want to bring us home for question 2.
Sure. And, you know, I'd echo what everybody else has said. You know, the goal was to get more food waste. In reality, the amount of packaging, especially in single-use stuff, typically outweighs the amount of food waste that you get with this. But the other reason that we pursued food waste is, and I hadn't heard mentioned yet, was that it's a more consistent feedstock. It's not as seasonal as green waste or stuff like that. So, you know, to balance out the inflow of material and balance out your production and all of those things, keep your crews working in the dead of winter. You know, food waste and biosolids are probably the two best avenues to do that. So that was one of our goals, was to mitigate as much as we could the seasonality of our inbound materials. And then, you know, if we specifically went after some pre-consumer materials just because of the what they would bring to the party, whether it be, you know, spent yeast from brewing operations or milk or whatever. You know, some of those things bring some nitrogen or some other things to the final product that help your marketability. And so that was one of our goals, as well as, you know, just more volume, you know, a better tip fee. Of course, that's balanced out by the extra costs on the back end quite a bit. And then really the seasonality, the balancing and mitigating of the inbound volume, so that we're not, you know, starving in the winter and buried in the spring. So that was our thoughts.
That's great. And everything that everybody shared really leads to kind of what the title of this first workshop is, which is manufacturing. You're manufacturing compost and how important the quality is. And so I want to revisit the question that was asked earlier. I'm going to put it in the chat, but basically, you know, we've talked about the importance of field testing, and that's part of some of the certifications. But I think just talking about, from each of your perspectives, does third-party certification help? And And so any feedback that you have on that. And I know Clinton, you started the conversation. Brian, you were going to jump in, and Jeff, you were too, but if we want to pick that up, that'd be great.
Well, I was just going to say is like, not only does the third-party certification in both areas help build confidence for the compost manufacturer with processing, but we have to look at it too as it also is providing truth to the consumer and the generator that's purchasing these materials, that ultimately they're actually going to an end life use, and they're not just getting screened out at a compost manufacturer and thrown away in a landfill. They're just taking a longer trip. Did they help divert some food? Yes. Hopefully. That's what we want. But ultimately, if we're just using them to throw them away and taking a longer trip to do it, that is not really truth to the consumer who's buying them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another big part I think that's important.
That's great. From our panelists, others want to jump in?
I'd just say that the certification, I think, is absolutely critical. As a composter, you have to make decisions sometimes pretty quickly on what you want. A customer calls you to bring stuff in, you've got to have a methodology to make sure you don't screw up your whole system. And that was our impetus to getting into and helping form CMA and that. I think the certification is critical. It'd be nice if we could get to one national, see the combining of the certifications. I think what Clinton was saying, that there's got to be some integrity and verification of it. I think there's a tremendous amount of greenwashing that has historically gone on in it. And it comes back to what was being mentioned earlier about trust and confidence in what we're taking. I think the certification is absolutely critical. If you want to have anybody have any confidence in coming into it. And I think that's part of moving the compostables world forward, whether it be market share for compostables, which I'd love to see everything that touches food waste be 100% compostable. So we fight the lookalikes. But to build market share, you've got to be able to actually compost it, and you've got to have confidence in it. I think it just builds the integrity of the system as a whole. Again, I'd like to see it get to one, and I think there's some avenues to do that, but there's no way we could survive without it.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
I have one quick comment.
Mhm.
I think this, what Clinton stated earlier is very viable to restate, is that what's happening has been, we need the food waste. That's what we started for. That's what we wanted the compostables for, to be able to bring in more food waste. We're now seeing a transition from food waste composting to treatment of compostable products. They're becoming a treatment facility or an option. And there could be other treatment options for them too, as we evolve in this process. But because we've all heard about, well, we're not just going to make packaging, now we're going to make consumer goods compostable because we can send them to a composter. The compostables don't make compost. They facilitate, they make a small amount, but really it's not the compost they make, it's what they divert. So I'm just seeing that change in direction from composting food waste to treating products made to be compostable.
That's great. Thank you, Bob. Scott, Brian, I don't know if you want to jump in, Jay.
Yeah, I would just have to second everything everybody said here. Yeah, I think just some reliable certifications are absolutely critical. We got to be able to have the confidence that the stuff breaks down. Certainly, even before they break down, litter is an issue, can be an issue in the process. So, I don't know that we fight the compostable stuff as much with just the non-compostable stuff that comes with it. So that's really more our battle. Even compostable bags, leaf bags, and the green material is I think would be another opportunity there too. So I'd like to see that more and more.
That's great. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's critical that we have certification and that we feel confidence in that certification. And how else can we? So the reason we got into CMA was because I had boxes and boxes and boxes of compostable products sent to me and said, hey, can you put this in your system and let me know if it works?
Hmm.
And it was like, well, why am I putting this in my system to let you know if your product actually works in my system or not? And so, and and our clients were coming to us and saying, hey, we just got sent this and they want to start, selling this in our market. Can you tell us if this is good or not? I have no idea. So that having that and having somewhere that they can go and then actually get the testing done, come back to us, and I can see that this has been certified is key to us. We will not accept materials that aren't certified anymore. That's just, there's no way around it, because we're not going to take that chance. And we're done testing for every company that gets into the market that says, hey, take our material and test it for us. So that's the reason we got into it. And it's been working. It's gotten so much better. And just being able to direct over and say, hey, this has got to be field tested. This is who you go to. And then most of the time it's coming back around and we're finding out either it worked or it didn't, and we can accept it or we can't.
That's so great. Thank you. Jay.
Yeah, I mean, again, echoing, but the certification, the CMA certification for us is critical as well. For all the reasons stated. And then just the certification also provides our customer with a list where they can go and know, okay, these are the products that I should be buying, because at that business is where, the product enters the market, enters our system. So that I would add that as another huge benefit for the certification, is that this is a product that they can buy and use with confidence and know it's coming to us, and we know that it makes a quality finished product once it's through our system.
That's awesome. Thank you. And thank you for sharing all those really important insights and follow-up questions. Keep the questions coming in the chat. Keep the questions coming in the chat. We're going to shift to our third question.
Yeah, and I noticed, Kelly, you asked a question about treatment, fermentation. So if one of the composters, you're welcome to respond if you have the answer in there. So question number 3 is, what has been some of the greatest challenges your facility has dealt with when it comes to accepting compostable packaging? If your facility has stopped accepting compostable packaging, why was that decision made? And what would have to change to accept them again? So let's start up at the top with A1, Clinton and folks.
Yes. Am I allowed to share some slides real quick, or would that be problematic if I did that right now?
That's
Go
great.
for it.
Can I go to share screen?
Yeah, you should be able to.
Okay, tell me if this works. Does that work?
Yes.
So I think all of us are going to answer this question very similar. It's contamination. So A1 Organics, again, we are not a hauler, we are a processor. We're using 90% of our technology is windrow technology. So Jay and actually Brian both kind of alluded to contamination, lifting compostables, lifting out of windrows, flying around the site, potentially going off site, having to go and clean them up, pick them up. But contamination, let me get here. Like, as you can see, like I started A1 Organics almost 6 years ago, and there's a great picture of our windrows 6 years ago. I was about a week in, and I just couldn't believe all the different types of lightweight plastics that were in the stream. Some compostable, some not breaking down, some breaking down. Like, just contamination, and it's cross contamination, unprotected bins, trash hidden, drive-bys, wishful recycling, no pre-sortation requirements, head market or buy commitments. No one's bringing back the finished compost, so they out of sight, out of mind. And I'll go through these quick, but it was nonstop, and it's just coming in, and it's really important to understand, like, it comes back, contamination is related to the types of contamination is related to the generator, and they're different, but the types are different and the quantities are different because of the way it's being collected. We have to go upstream, and we have to get to this sortation process at the smallest volume. It's really important. That's where it's really effective to remove contamination and making sure we're putting the right thing in the right bin. Otherwise, we have to simplify the stream, and that kind of leads me to the answering the question of oh, here you go. Sorry, I just skip through these real quick. I'm almost done. Just like, do you guys see the food on the right? Sorry, no, there's no food. It's all packaging. No food, it's all packaging. A little bit of food, sorry, but it's contamination, contamination, contamination. So here, I'll get out of here. Actually, I can't. I lost you guys. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Are we good? Okay, yeah, we're back. But yeah, like for us, again, it's the confidence that we can accept these streams that are using compostables to bring in the food diversion. They're going to break down in our system. We're going to be able to go through the system, and we're not going to have to remove all the contamination that's associated with that mixed collection stream on the front end. So it's really important that the integrity of the stream from start to finish, and we're part of it. Like we're kind of that last resort tool saying, hey, yeah, here comes these great organics. We're going to grab these last couple things. But when you have 3 to 20% by volume of contamination coming to your site in these streams, that is not going to make a finished compost a quality one. And it takes a lot of resources to try to remove that. So for us to accept them again, we got to have that confidence all the way through. And then we need to make sure that this is something we haven't talked about just yet, but we got to support the finished end market for that compost that's created with compostables in them. That really helps us make sure that, hey, they're going to keep it clean on the up, and then we're going to have a great product that they're proud to use and bring back, not just divert and be done. Bob, do you want to add anything?
Well, I'd only add that I think we'll talk about it a little bit later, but I mean, I go back to the, if we were only dealing with compostability of the compostables in our stream, that's solvable really quick. It's obviously the add-on. And I've been saying this since I'm retired, but still engaged. I will tell you that source separated organics is organics separated at the source. That's the key. As much as possible. Couldn't mention the small volume stuff. You guys can all plug into that. Where's the easiest place to take contamination out at the lowest possible touch point, right? So that's what we're talking about is, well, I guess that'll probably be in the fourth question. I won't take time here, but thank you, Clinton.
All right, Scott, do you want to go next?
I don't know that there's anything more that I can add to that. I think that's absolutely was certainly what it's contamination. And again, I'm not even in the game as much as these guys are. And I see it on just a very small scale how important it is. So, yeah, I really don't have much to add to that. I think that was excellent. Says it all for us.
Right. Jay.
Again, contamination, of course, number one. So I'll add a little different angle on this question. Another challenge for us, and it's kind of in an A1's experience, I would imagine, is just kind of holding the line on what we take and what we don't take, and having that conversation. In our jurisdiction, like I mentioned, our whole compostable program was always directed towards our commercial customers and businesses. and kind of stadiums and in-house. We never accepted these products as part of our residential stream. And the nuances of the solid waste system, which I'll talk about on question 4, are there. And so I've had to, and Cedar Grove has been involved in a lot of uncomfortable, contentious discussions about why we do and don't take certain things. And so that's been a challenge because you don't want to be the bad guy. You want to help diversion and help your community have a successful program. So that's been a challenge for us. Having CMA has been a huge benefit in that regard because we can help educate the customer or the jurisdiction, whoever's we're talking to, about that issue. And then, of course, the other thing that we do a lot is have people out to our facility to see what we get. You really have to see a facility and what the material looks like coming in and what the finished product looks like on the back end. And that end market support, which Clinton mentioned, is a huge component. Is that I talk to a lot of people about diversion, but I don't see as much in certain circles of end use of the finished product, which is also just as important piece of the puzzle, is using the product that we're making. Of course, we're doing our best to sell compost as much as we can, but when you're using the product and understanding, yes, there will be impurities because of the things that people put in their bins. So those are a couple of the challenges that Cedar Grove is seeing.
Thank you. Brian Denali.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I echo what my fellow composters have already stated, but also, and I had already talked about litter issues being a big issue for us, specifically in one of our locations recently where we have switched to only CMA approved fiber-based products, which is, and there was an article last week that some of you probably maybe came across in your reading, which was out of our Ann Arbor site, and the feedback and the pushback that we're getting out of our decision to with the city to stop taking in PLA and any compostable plastics and only fiber based. And we understand some of the negative feedback on that, because there are people that are in business and that also, that are in the business of trying to, sell these types of products and such, but it can't be at the expense of our compost and our composting operation. And when people come to our sites and they see what Clinton just laid out in the windrows, and I know that picture because it's been at many of my sites, and it's embarrassing when you bring someone to your site and you're showing them that. And because, how can you say that I'm going to sell you a quality product when your windrows look like that? And there's no way when you're operating in a facility like that's outdoor that you can keep that all contained to one area and not blow back into your finished product at some point. Even if you screen it out, it's still getting blown back into your finished product. So there's so many challenges with that, and that being the biggest one, that we have taken in various types of materials. We have pushed back at times, but then also we're investing up front with depackaging equipment. And until, people will say, well, should I still use compostable products in what I'm throwing away, even though you're just going to take it and depackage it, and it's going to go to the incinerator or to the landfill with the rest of the packaging that's non-compostable. And I'll go back to what I was saying before. Our ultimate goal is, I don't want to have that extra step. I don't want that extra capital cost. But for now, until I can be confident that what's coming in isn't going to be contaminated with non-compostables, that's a step that if we're going to take in source separated organics, and to Bob's point, most of the time those source separated organics haven't been source separated to the point that they need to be. We have to invest in technology up front that's going to remove those contaminants. And yes, those are compostables coming out with that, so that we have confidence that what we're putting into our windrows and what we're going to finish on the back end and sell a quality product on the back end is, that's our goal. And there was a quote in that article last week that said Denali's the only reason Denali banned compostable plastics is because they wanted a higher quality product and they wanted to make more money for their finished compost. Okay, yes, that's what we want to do. We want to create the highest quality product that we can. We are manufacturers, and that's what we're doing.
Thanks, Brian. I'm going to bring in Napa's response, and then we'll go to Jeff. So they say the biggest hurdle for us is that most compostable, hold on a second, the spotlight myself. Okay. Most compostable packaging, basically everything that isn't uncoated fiber or wood, is not allowed for organic compost production. So we need to remove it in our current process. That is why we have been pushing for over a decade for the NOP petitioning, so that we can get a clear answer on whether we can or cannot accept compostable packaging going forward. And this now will align with California's AB 1201, which will not allow packaging to be labeled as compostable unless it's allowed for organic production as of 1/1/2026. The other big issue is that packaging is way too complex. Most of it is still conventional plastic, and compostable packaging needs to be more widely used and more prominently labeled. Otherwise, customer confusion will continue and the products will end up in all three streams, conventional and compostable. This is where we hope that our EPR program, SB 54, will force packaging producers to use one type of packaging for a packaging type, so the material gets to where it should be: reuse, recycling, or compost. Otherwise, it will be banned. That may have spurred some other comments or thoughts from other panelists. Let's talk to Jeff, and then we can kind of circle back around with the time if we have time left.
Thank you. One thing I'd mention is, we are probably the smallest of all the companies that are on the panel here. And so, one of the real challenges and decision points for us is just the impact, and Brian alluded to it, just the capital costs. If you're going to take this stuff and you're going to have to deal with the contamination, whether it be to fight litter or to screen the material out, to catch the film plastics, that's at least one more machine, and more than likely two or three. And there's very few machines that are used in any production in this industry that seems to be less than $500,000. So when you're talking about, bringing in a compostable product that may or may not work, and you're doing that with the idea of getting in more volume, you're going to have to balance that against what the capital costs are going to be. And once you have the equipment, then there's also the maintenance and the ongoing costs of that, whether it be labor or whatever. So, really comes down to fundamental business decisions on a composter on whether or not they should take any feedstock, just because there's domino effects of everything we do on the quality of our product, the cost of production, the revenues in and out the front door and the back door, which have to get in balance in order to make the return on investment worth it. And like Brian said, yeah, absolutely, we want to improve the quality out the door so that we can maximize our revenues. That's what we do. We're no different than any other manufacturer in that regard, and we should never feel like we should apologize for that. So for small composters, which are the bulk of the facilities in the U.S., the cost of capital is a big part of it. So that's just my 2 cents. Otherwise, I totally agree with everything else the other guys said.
Great, thanks, Jeff.
I'll just jump in there before Jeff. Even the larger composters, capital is a huge issue.
I have no doubt.
It is a huge issue as well. So
yeah, it's just a little easier to go to the bank with it.
I know Travis is listening, so I'm going to just say yes. I agree. Yes.
Yeah, I guess the only other comment I would make is, even with, we did ban compostables, but we also have limited or banned fibrous paper towel products too, because we don't know what are in them with regard to microplastics, which is another whole issue outside the contamination. And I think, we're concerned that, what makes a paper towel so strong, right? It's not, what makes them so strong. And I think there needs to be more testing around some of those products as well.
Thanks, Travis.
That's great. And we're gonna use the last segment for the last question. And I love seeing all these amazing questions come into the chat. And one of the things that I think is at the heart of this bigger conversation is, at what point do you get to call something compostable? And by calling it compostable doesn't make it so. It's compostable when it can compost. And so just love listening to all these different perspectives from the people operating the facilities that are trying to transform compostable products into compost. And so our last question is, what should other stakeholders in the supply chain, the solid waste management system, and regulators take into consideration when problem solving around these issues? What would be the most helpful?
Good question.
Yeah.
I go first.
Yeah, so Clinton, if you
Uh,
want to take us off with A1, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd bullet point. I'll just say my 3 bullet points and then I'm going to come back. But standardization of the approved certified compostables, you kind of just said it. What is compostable? What does that mean?
Mhm.
Sortation requirements at the source. I think accountability at the generator level is really, really, really important. We have to look at the collection system of how we're operating and getting organics to compost manufacturers. Again, it's not the same as single stream recycling. It's different. There's other nuances all involved. I'll just say that. And then end market support of finished compost through the purchase of the finished product is super important. We got to remember to purchase the products that we're making from our diversion. If diversion outpaces the application of finished compost manufacturers run out of space. We run out of room. And now what do we do? What do we do with our finished compost? Not everybody in every market has that issue, but markets are different across the country and in different states. So that those are my 3 big bullet points. But also, like in states, like we have a truth in labeling law that's just went into effect for certified or for compostables. It's written pretty good. There's still some loopholes in it, but it's bringing attention to the big conversation that we got to get the bad actors off the shelves. We have to start there. We have to work on certification to make sure, which we are, make sure the good players have a place, and we're not using tricky words like biodegradable, or there's a whole bunch of them. Like if you say compostable, compostable is compostable,
Mhm.
and it works. So we have that in Colorado. That's starting, and there's other ones across the country. But we have to get this. We got to get it all put into one package so it works for everyone. Anything else, Travis or Bob?
I would just say one thing, and that's that we have to, on the regulatory side, is that we're not a single stream system, but I believe back in the biosolids industry, when we're in that too, for years they built a new plant and they get it to do a great job, and they had an arrow at the end of the design said to be handled by others, which is kind of what this feels like.
Mm.
Regulatory agencies need to understand that when they're setting up these programs to be handled by others, they'll figure it out. It doesn't work on the other end. So I'm going to put the emphasis back on the front end, at the source as much as possible, understanding that there might still be some little polishing done at a composting site. And that's a paradigm shift we've been talking about for almost 6 years now, a paradigm shift from what we were trying to do to where we're at. And I've seen a lot of shifting in the paradigm, so I'm excited about that. But that's my main thing. Regulatory needs to understand that to be handled by others is not a solution.
That's great. Thank you, Bob. And we're going to move through this question a little bit faster. Travis, is there anything you want to add before we shift to Scott?
Nope.
Okay. All right, Scott.
Yeah, again, I support everything they just said. To me, I think, yeah, the real key is getting some kind of, and I like what Jeff said earlier, getting kind of some kind of a national certification, combining all the different types, certifications, certifiers into maybe a national group that I think would be very helpful and something that we need to work toward so that there's some, real unification, standardized protocols out there. And then, of course, everything Bob says, source separated. Organics need to be source separated. Organics, absolutely. And then I think the other thing is the confusion as far as the labeling of the organics products, making sure that consumer confusion doesn't exist. I think, looking at what we saw there, even at the uh, Compost Council, we had 3 bins, but yet you look in all 3 bins after everybody, and we're in the industry, half of the recycling bin was full of compostable cups. You see, so we've got to address that consumer confusion somehow, and I don't know how the best way to do that. So to me, I think those are the big issues. And then of course the National Organics Program, pushing for them to accept the compostable products, I think is key as well, because a lot of our products do go into organic production, or can, if we don't have compostable plastics in it, so, or the compostable products. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Scott. Jay.
So I would say one thing to consider when working on this is really, and what I would hope is that everyone spends some time learning how the solid waste collection system works in their area. That matters a lot on where the opportunities are and where we need to work together as a group. So I think that's important, is kind of understanding the system, because then you can make informed decisions about what products are flowing where and where it's going. And then that kind of segues into kind of more of an ownership model of end market support, having people understand where their material goes, how it's processed, what it turns into, and then using that product and being proud of the fact that they're doing something good for the environment and making a great product and improving the environment. And I think that piece has been kind of left off. It's been in our area all about diversion. And we've forgotten about that other side of the equation. And we saw it in recycling. Everyone thought they were doing a great job and they were throwing everything in their bin. I work in this industry and I didn't know where any of my recyclables were going and what they were being turned into and if they were actually being recycled. So good opportunity to put together a really good system in your community and understand that all the pieces of the puzzle and the compost manufacturing is can't be forgotten. So that's kind of why we're here today. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Jay. Brian.
Again, going after 4 of my colleagues or multiple of my colleagues, if in the best of all cases, there'd be a federal standardized recycling program where if I'm in New York, it's the same as Denver, it's the same as Washington State, it's the same as that. I know, when I go anywhere, that if I put it in this bin and these types of materials go in this bin and these go in this bin and these go in this bin, and that is some of the biggest confusion, the consumer confusion. And even on traditional recycling, it's still confusing on traditional recycling because there's different colors out there and there's different, 1 through 7, and I'm in the industry and I look at it and my kids will go, "Dad, can I throw this out? Or can I recycle this?" And I say, "I don't know," especially if I'm in different areas of the country. And so And that is, I think, ultimately, I don't know how we do that in this country in particular, but pulling people together to come up with a standardized system would be a huge step forward in the right direction for not just organics, but all recycling from a consumer based.
That's great. Well, and bringing in, let's see. Spotlight myself, I guess. So bringing in the perspective from Napa Recycling, what they shared was, first off, we need to clarify on the NOP AB 1201 question so that we can plan going forward. Then we need single-use packaging to be reduced overall. Otherwise, our recycling and composting systems will not be able to successfully handle the ever-increasing array of packaging, even with extended producer responsibility. And then we need better labeling, universal packaging types, and investment in recycling and composting facility infrastructure. If we get that, we believe we can do what we do, which is educate our customers efficiently, collect material, and process recyclables and compostables effectively and sustainably. So Jeff, do you want to share?
Yeah, I think I've never batted cleanup this many times in my entire life, and there's probably a really good reason why. I guess, going back to the question of should other stakeholders in the supply chain or regulators, solid waste system understand is the fundamental business model of a composter. I mean, we're a manufacturer of an organic soil amendment. And we're also in an industry that is emerging, and we're trying to learn this on the run at the same time we're handling increased volumes. It's very capital intensive, and once you turn a spigot on of one type of material coming in, it's very hard to turn it off because if people get used to being able to put something in, you're never going to teach the public to not put it in there, at least for a long period of time. But understanding the business models of a composter is no different than understanding the needs of your customers, and that without it, if we don't pay attention to the business fundamentals of a composter, then the system doesn't work. And I think that's been part of the big resistance from the composting community against this stuff. It's just business decisions. Not that we don't understand the others, but these are the ones that, literally my own family invested everything in. So you just got to understand what's being asked of them. And when you think about the emerging industry or the growing industry, it reminds me very much of the recycling industry in the 90s when they're trying to figure out how to, pull cans and bottles out efficiently. But and that's happening as we go. How do we pull out contamination? How do you use new technologies and the equipment that are very expensive to pull that out? And then, the other thing that hasn't been mentioned too much is there's a liability. There is product liability associated with our end products. If you don't think there is, just have some glass in it that you deliver to Mrs. Smith's house, and she's going to have you come out and pick it back up again. But PFAS and all of those issues, everything that goes into our compost is going to come back out into the system. And more we're going to be facing, like any other manufacturer, product liabilities, as well as all the return on investment challenges of our business models. So, again, walk a mile in a person's shoes and you'll understand their lives pretty well. And I think that's part of, everybody understanding that what we're attempting to do as an industry and how fast it's changing just over the 10 years that I've been in it. So I guess that's the main thing that everybody would be if I had to have all the stakeholders understand it, they just understand my world a little bit better. And I can say that I'll do my absolute best to understand your world. And I think that's true for the whole industry.
That's great. Thank you, Jeff. And Clinton, you want to jump back in?
I do. Travis, I'm going to jump on my soapbox. But I want to reinforce what Jay was saying. And that's where regulators, stakeholders, supply chain stakeholders and the solid waste system management systems can understand is that what we are creating, connecting to the why of why do we divert organic material? Well, everybody knows for methane reduction from landfills. But the other big why here is we're creating a finished compost that can bring back so much value for climate change and for saving water and removing carbon and doing all these benefits in local communities where we are all at. And really truly understanding how beneficial this material can be when it's used is a big miss. Like that's why we always talk about closing the compost loop. That's the end of the loop. And it's there's so much there's so much value there, and it's just incredible. And that that's part of this conversation as a whole. And it's really important to bring that up and continue to push what we're talking about here and why we do what we do.
Mm.
And why we want it so it's why we want clean quality compost, to use it for its beneficial use.
No, appreciate that. And what a way to bring us home. One thing that I'm going to share really quick is what's next. And so as Ariel talked about, we are working through the entire system of stakeholders impacting compostables. And so our next workshop will be about haulers. We're going to then go to generators and on through. So whether you can join us for a few of them or all of them, we hope you do. So very grateful for our panelists today. What I put into the chat is if you are not involved and you would like to get involved or you'd like to learn more about what this is and what we're doing, click out that link, and there's lots of ways to sign up to get more information and to get involved. I will send out the notes from this, and we will be working on the answers to the wonderful questions that you asked. So that will come out after this as well. And just really wanted to share a deep appreciation for this conversation, a deep appreciation for our panelists, and a deep appreciation for everyone in the audience. And we know that everybody sits in a different part of the system. And our intention is to hold a space where conversations can happen to better understand how the system works and what is true for each of those members within this incredible system supporting composting and compostable products. And look forward to working with all of you. If you have any questions, you know where to reach us, and looking forward to the continuation of these workshops. Thank you so much, and hope you have a great rest of your day. Ariel, anything you want to share before we finish?
Nope, just appreciate everybody's participation and engagement, and we have officially initiated this work, and I'm excited about the possibility.
That's great. All right, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. Happy Friday, happy weekend, and we'll see you soon.
See you guys.
Thanks.